Hello, everybody, and welcome to the General Eclectic Podcast with Rod Dreher. I'm your host, Kale Zeldin, and we're here, Rod, for episode 4 of season 3. Man, you've been on the road as usual. What's up, brother?
As usual. Well, I started out my travels last weekend in London. Our friends at the Irreverand Podcast, Father Daniel French and his cohorts, held an event in London itself for their podcast listeners, and it was just great. I mean, Kale, we sit here online and we say what we need to say, and you get good emails from people, but there's nothing like seeing people in person who are like-minded, who appreciate the work you do. Got a lot of people saying how they listen to this podcast and want to know more about you.
And it always feels good, honestly. It's funny. I don't know. You probably don't feel this way because you're out and about, but like I just sort of do this and I don't know. I mean, occasionally people will ping me on Twitter and it's always great. I love, I'm always like to hear what people have to say. Sometimes the comments are a little bit mean, but fine, like whatever. One must have thick skin. But to actually think that people are listening and watching is pretty wild, man.
No, it's cool. And I got to tell you, it was so great just to be around Christians. And there were even some non-Christians there who don't have faith, but they appreciate the stance that Father Daniel, Father Tom, and Father Jamie have taken against wokeness, against COVID lockdown, and so forth. And they came out to listen. We talked about enchantment. We talked about all kinds of things. And we went out for beer afterwards. It was just a great time. And it just such a comfort to know that there are people fighting the good fight there in England, even as the shadow of the dark wing falls over that country. As you and I are talking, I read it just today. It came out from Alliance Defending Freedom that a Catholic priest in Birmingham, the city of Birmingham, has been arrested and charged under the whatever that wicked act they have. Yeah. He was praying silently near an abortion clinic that was closed. No one was there. And they charged him for having a pro-life bumper sticker on his car.
I mean, it's almost the kind of thing that, you would fear would be made up. I mean, honestly, right? I mean, like praying in front of an abortion clinic, a bumper sticker, but there it is. I mean, the man is literally being, harassed legally harassed for the crime of praying and witnessing. It really is. It's pretty remarkable, Rod. It's pretty.
Yeah, the priest said that he wasn't even, or he told the police and said he wasn't even praying about abortion. He was praying for free speech, and they still arrested him. Right. There is now a law that has been passed by the House of Lords, sponsored by a conservative peer, a Tory peer, a baroness, that would make the local law nationwide against this abortion clinic thing. And it's just incredible. And talking to the Catholics and the Anglicans I met at there in London at the event, they are just disgusted by the cowardice of their bishops, that no bishop wants to stand up for anybody, not at all. Just stay quiet, conform. And it's just, you realize that these folks are on their own. They really, really are. Similarly, in Ireland, I left London and went over to Ireland to spend a couple of days with Paul Kingsnorth, interviewing him for my book. And, we've all heard about how Catholicism has collapsed in Ireland. But man, when you actually go there and talk to people, it's the real deal. And somebody I was talking to was telling me in my travels around there was telling me that it seems like the Irish Catholic hierarchy there doesn't even believe in itself anymore. They were also just craven and don't want to speak out at all against all the woke stuff that the government is doing, and that which sadly has the support of a lot of people.
Well, look, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, a major contributing factor in the lack of standing that the church has. Really, there's a direct line to it and the loss of moral authority.
Because of the scandal.
Exactly. I mean, and that's a real thing. And this is exactly the kind of thing that you've been talking about for sure. but they are cowering. Their witness, and here's the tragedy here is like the witness is directly compromised and indirectly compromised by their inability to stand up for what's right, because they have a track record, frankly, of not doing it.
That's right.
Not complicated people.
Yeah, and talking to some folks in London about this, about the Irish situation, and also in correspondence I've had with Catholics in Ireland, they say it did start with the scandal. I mean, the scandal was the straw that broke the camel's back, but the church has been in decline there for a while. And, back in 1975, 91% of the Irish population was en masse on Sunday. And now
it's insane. I mean, that's so
imagine?
High. I mean, it's got to be almost perfectly flipped now, right?
Not quite, but it's getting there. And certainly among the young. I mean, from what I learned in my conversations, I mean, the young in Ireland just have nothing but contempt for the church. The church has no moral authority to speak to them because it, for so long, it abused the power it had. I mean, look, the Irish Constitution for a long time, the modern Constitution gave the Catholic Church a special place, a primacy there. And it wasn't an official state religion, but it was close. And it certainly acted that way.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to think about what the integralists proposed, Catholic integralists said, oh, no, we need to have church tied more closely to the state. Good Lord, look at Ireland. The church is dead in the hearts of most people there. And you can tell a similar story about Franco's Spain and other countries where you have a state religion, England with the Church of England. But the big lesson I took, Kale, from coming out of Ireland is that if the church is going to survive there, it cannot be people, what the Irish Catholics that are left looking to the Episcopate or even looking to the clergy to save things. They're going to have to do this themselves.
Why are they so alone? I mean, why are the pious laity, and I mean pious in that for the fullness of piety, right? Not
right.
But why are the pious are alone here?
Yeah, I think and again, I'm an outsider here. This is just based on conversations I've had, and I welcome correction. But because the institution has been so discredited by the way it has behaved, the Magdalen laundries where pregnant girls were sent away, and to be honest, the Catholic Church was, the institutional Catholic Church was reflecting in many ways the way Irish people thought. Sure. One Irishman told me that, he was hard on his people. He said that, we went along in a craven, servile way towards the institutional church for so long. And when we had the chance to break away, a lot of people did. But now they're servile towards the EU and the state, which does everything the EU wants. But I think that, it's my impression that the institution and meaning the bishops and the priests are so shell-shocked. Everything has changed so harshly and so quickly that they don't know what to do. And I think that if the Irish faithful who are still going to Mass and who still believe in it, if they're going to pull out of this, they're going to have to pretty radically change the way they view themselves in relation to the institutional church. Now, I'm not talking about leaving the institutional church. I'm saying that it's so easy, especially I think at a place like Ireland, to imagine that the church is coterminous with the institution.
Right.
And what I picked up there in the 3 days I was in Ireland is, gosh, the heritage that the Irish people have from Celtic Christianity, going back to, the 400s. It's so incredibly rich and so deep. And I hope that the Irish can push past the dilapidated institution. Again, I'm not encouraging Catholics to leave the church, but I'm saying is realize that the church is so much more than the bishops and the clergy. They're a part of the church, but you have so much treasure there in the history of that country and the faith in that country.
Why do you think that's such a temptation, Rod? For to mistake the church for the Episcopate, let's say?
Well, you could probably answer this better than I, because you're a big Catholic longer, but I was a Catholic, as you know, for a while, and I think that it's so easy to do, because without, whether they mean to or not, a lot of the official church wants you to think that the church is coterminous with the institution, with
Right. I
the
mean,
bureaucracy.
it serves their ends. I mean, I do understand
Sure.
it. I do understand it from their standpoint, even if I disagree with it.
Hmm.
If that's your sort of guiding ethos. No, I mean, I guess I don't understand why we laity um, seem to want it. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
what I
well,
mean
because
by that.
somebody else does your thinking for you. And look, as a conservative, and as a conservative who was conservative Catholic,
Yeah.
we believed. I believed, as a conservative Catholic. Conservative Catholics believe that the institution means something. It's
Right.
there to teach authoritatively, and I don't dispute that. I didn't dispute it as a Catholic, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
dispute it for Catholics now.
Yeah.
I would simply say that when I say you outsource your thinking, I
Mhm.
don't mean that. That's not the sort of thing that I would say in support of any dissenter. I would simply say that the faith is so much more than simply showing up, ticking the boxes, staying in line, conforming with what the leadership wants. You got to own the faith. You got to appropriate it into your heart. But I think probably. Well, I was reading some long essay when I was
Mhm.
over there. I found online. It might have been in First Things about what happened to the Irish Catholic Church. And they quoted, whoever it was that wrote it, quoted an old woman at the back of a church selling church magazine. She said,
Yeah.
we Irish, a lot of people have wanted to leave for a long time. They were just looking for an excuse.
That's
So the
interesting.
faith had died in their hearts. They
Yeah.
were just going through the motions, because I think it makes sense to people. And COVID, as we know, not just in the Catholic Church, but in a lot of churches, it broke the habit people had of going to church, when in fact, whether they're Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, whatever, the faith had died in their heart already. And it was just
Mm.
breaking the habit that made them realize where they really stood.
Yeah, you and I, maybe one of our first, second, third shows, we talked about this, kind of in the context of COVID, that COVID kind of, we feared, I think we were right, but we feared at the time that this would give people permission basically to walk away and be done with it. And again, not because of anything that COVID was in and of itself, but that COVID seems to be some sort of apocalyptic accelerant, which exposed maybe some pre-existing conditions that were
Mhm.
otherwise obscured. Is that how you were seeing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I did not realize until I was in England and having lengthy conversations with Christians there. I didn't realize how serious the lockdown was, and how the response of the Episcopate in both the Catholic and the Anglican churches really was an unveiling for a lot of the faithful.
Mhm.
They felt like that,
How
if
so? How so?
for example, I was talking to this Anglican priest
Uh-huh.
who told me that, um, Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, basically said, evacuate your churches, close them now. And they went for the longest time, for I don't know, over a year, I guess,
Yeah.
with no communion offered. And the priest said to me, how is it that we're supposed to believe this is the body and blood of Christ, and yet we don't offer it to people? We make no arrangement to make sure people are cared for spiritually. That for him was a red pill about where things really stood in his own church, and it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, me too. I just, I have always believed, because I'm a Catholic and this is sort of what I was taught and what I was raised in and what I read my way through, is that, mass is mass. You got to go to mass, right? That this was important enough, technically on the books, that if I miss mass on a Sunday, I have to go to confession, reconciliation, to repair a ruptured arrangement, relationship
Yeah,
with God, right?
yeah,
Say what of that what you will, but that's sort of the world that I was brought up into. And then, all of a sudden, well, unless there's this semi-mysterious, virus that precludes me from going. So,
mm,
and again, I'm sophisticated enough to understand how this might work, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's just that simple. I think it's like, well, you used to tell me that it was absolutely essential that I go to mass on Sundays. And now you're telling me that it's absolutely essential that I not go.
Right, right.
Like
Well,
what matters?
right. Exactly. But to be sympathetic or to and unfair, I think, to church leaders, because, in my Orthodox parish in Louisiana, we had this too. COVID came on so fast and so strong. We collectively, we didn't know really what we were dealing with. So it made sense at first to let's shut things down until we figure this out. But these shutdowns went on way longer than they should have. And even then, after the church is shut down, so people that gave church leaders a chance to figure out, okay, how do we deal with this? How can we care for people spiritually under these circumstances? From the folks I talked to, Catholic and Anglican over there, it just wasn't. The leadership seemed so willing to conform to what the state wanted that they didn't even push back. And again, I don't know how fair that is, but this is just what I was picking up from the people. But I got to say, Kale, that I'd never been to rural Ireland. I'd only been to Dublin once, but I'd heard about what a thin place rural Ireland is.
What do you mean by thin place?
By thin place, a place where the line, the buffer between the seen world and the unseen world is porous. And boy, I think it's really true. And I think it's true in two ways. First of all, a friend of mine, just before we came on, texted me and said, well, wait a minute, what is a thin place? I mean, it's all a matter of what you pay attention to. If you're paying attention to God, every place is a thin place. And I think there's something to that. In a place like Ireland, where there's so many holy places, there's more to direct your attention to God. But I also think it's true that a thin place is a place that seems more spiritually charged than normal, with God's presence, or if it's like negative, with the demonic presence. And Paul, I was only with Paul Kingsworth for a couple of days. He lives in rural County Galway, but he wanted me to see holy wells. This is a big thing in Ireland. I'd never even heard about them, but there are natural springs all over the country that Paul said, may have been sacred even to pagans in the pre-Christian era. But the Christians baptized them, and for time out of mind, Christians have been coming there to take their waters, and to they do something called making the rounds. I guess that's where we got the phrase from. To make the rounds of a holy well is, you walk around it praying a certain number of times. It's ritually prescribed, to honor God and the saint to whom it's dedicated. And some people drink the water, bless themselves with the water. Some people report healings. But man, the first one I went to was called St. Flannan's Well. St. Flannan was like a 8th century Irish bishop. And you're back in deep, deep Christianity there.
Right.
And it was behind a field. Pull up on the side of the road, go behind a field. And they had built a little shelter over the spring, and there's all kinds of Catholic kitsch there, glow in the dark Madonna, Padre Pio, and all. But what's so moving about it, Kale, is that these people who go there, even if there's nothing spiritual about it, if there's no real spiritual power there, even if you thought that, the fact that for hundreds of years, the faithful have been coming there to pray for their sickness, for their sick relatives, for the dying, for the dead, for their families, on and on and on. Oh my God, it's so moving.
Well, not having been myself, I mean, it clearly, I saw the pictures, some of the pictures you took, and clearly it's a locus of something. I mean, like, in other words, it becomes a kind of rallying point by which people exercise and experience something larger than themselves. And so I think in that regard, it's like, it's real, right?
Yeah. And there's that great Philip Larkin poem for the 20th century, Church Going. It's Larkin was an atheist, and he wrote this poem. It's one of his best, about from the point of view of a cyclist going through the English countryside. He's not a believer, but he stops at an old country church that has been abandoned. And he goes in and starts thinking about what this church means in a faithless age. And he concludes it by saying that there will always be people who are seeking to be more serious, who will gravitate to places like this because it's a good place to grow wise in, if only because there are so many dead lying around. I kind of felt that way about the holy wells. There aren't any dead lying around there, but people have been coming. There are ordinary people for so many centuries just to pray, and I think that they've been hallowed in that way. We make something holy in part by what we choose to pay attention to. And those wells, those little simple springs coming out of the ground in Ireland, have been seen by faithful people as holy.
So what's the draw? What's the draw for Paul? I mean, Paul wanted to take you here, and I think our audience knows, our mutual respect and admiration for Paul and the kind of work that he's doing. What do you think? Why do you think he wanted you to see those?
Oh, well, because I had come to visit Paul Kingsthorpe to interview him for my book on re-enchantment, but he wanted to show me Enchanted Ireland. And Paul is an Orthodox Christian. He takes those wells as holy. And he wanted me to see what folk Christianity meant in Ireland and has meant. We went after we went to St. Flannan's Well, we went to the ruins of a medieval monastery founded by St. Colman. There's several St. Colmans in Irish history. I can't, this guy, St. Colman MacDhu, I can't say his last name, but he was a 7th century hermit, a wonder worker, an abbot, and a bishop. He had founded this monastery there. It's in ruins now, but it's so impressive to just be there and to realize what this place had once meant. And I didn't know this about Irish Christianity, but it didn't have dioceses for the longest times. Ireland was... Yeah, it's like I think the year 1000, maybe after that, Irish Christianity was monastic Christianity. And the abbots were the ones who had the administrative power and spiritual power there. But they had there on the grounds of this monastery, and St. Colman's grave was there. I was able to pray there. They had this big tower that's came, like I think after the year 1000, was built high up, so a round tower, so the monks could escape Viking raids. Wow. There was a door maybe 8 stories up, and what the monks would do is they had I guess a rope ladder that would come down. If the Vikings were coming, they could all climb up there and pull the ladder up, and the Vikings would plunder their monastery, but they would survive it.
Wow. Well, that really puts some things in relief now, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Then we went, the thing I really wanted to see, Kale, was St. Colman's cave.
Yeah.
St. Colman, I mentioned he was a hermit. He had gone into a faraway cave, and I say far away, but back then it seemed far away. It was deep, deep into a forest in what's now called the Burren. Now, the Burren, since Colman's day, it's been completely denuded of grass, or almost completely denuded, because of overgrazing and things like that. So it's this limestone plain with a mountain there, a mountain range there, a tall hill. Well, St. Colman's cave is in what's left of the Burren forest. Paul knew where it was. We went there, and I just wanted to walk in and sit there and pray in a cave where this man lived for 7 years. This holy man lived for 7 years. And we went up there, and of course, there's a holy well there. Somebody had left what Paul said was fairy food there at the holy well. It was a chunk of brown soda bread. It was soaked, so it must have rained on it, and with 2 fern fronds arranged and Paul said, we better not mess with that. That's fairy food. Well, it turns out that, the country people in Ireland, some of them still believe in the little people. Yeah. I mean, that was a huge part of their spiritual war. I don't know if Paul believes in fairies. I think probably not. But I think he was right to say we should respect this. Somebody came out here and did this. We should respect him. And then I went into the cave. I climbed up a muddy hill and went into the cave. And man, I got to tell you, Kale, to sit there, especially as an American, to sit there in this narrow cave, it's only really big enough for a single man to sleep in, and just to pray for 20 minutes. I prayed 1 round of my prayer rope, and nothing has changed since his day. I mean, I looked down at the ground. This is where the saints slept. I looked out at the light at the end of the opening of the cave. This is what he saw every morning when he woke up. Ireland is that wild. Yeah. And that really stayed with me. Nothing big, and I didn't have any sort of woo-woo moment in there, but it really stayed with me because I thought that this is the root. This is going back deep. And this is going to be the kind of thing that saves Christianity and brings it back in Ireland and beyond Ireland too, maybe even to our times. This sense of the spirituality of a man who wanted to seek what Martin Shaw calls the mossy face of Christ so much that he went to the farthest extremes of human experience in his place and time and lived in a cave for 7 years to pray and to fast and to seek God. That's the sort of wild Christianity that we're going to have to get in touch with that. And so I'm not saying that we should all move out to a cave, but we need to get in touch with that bush soul of the early Christian hermits and saints and monks.
So what do we mean by this sort of the wilding of Christianity? And I've heard you use this phrase. And what do you mean by this? Like, you certainly don't mean like go out and like party up and be a crazy person. What do you mean by like the wild? Like, bring that to us.
Well, what makes me think that people like Paul Kingsnorth and Martin Shaw, who are both midlife recent converts to Christianity.
Right.
Paul comes out of I think he had dabbled in paganism and Wicca before he came to Christ, and Martin comes out of the professional study and dedication to mythology, the power of myth.
Right.
They're able, like Jordan Peterson, who hasn't converted, but they're able to see what we Christians have with fresh eyes, and they've gone past the sort of tame bourgeois Christianity that you and I were raised in, that most people are raised in. Martin had it, I think, to some extent, but he had put it away. Paul never had any of it, but they were able, maybe because of because the form of Christianity they found that pulled them in was orthodoxy, and orthodoxy still has a very big place in its shared collective imagination for these experiences. And in fact, even today on Mount Athos, the Greek monastic republic, you can find plenty of hermits living in caves or in the Egyptian desert, just like when the early desert fathers. That appealed to them, and they saw the wonder in that. I mean, think about the place you have to have in your mind for wonder to go live out in a cave to see Christ.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I what immediately comes to my mind here, and it's a little bit of an enigma, Rod. I sometimes feel like the church, broadly understood, of course, the church is just a victim of its own sort of success, a victim of its own. I mean, historically here, I'm talking, not timely. But also there's just sort of the utter coziness with which the church has made peace with the world.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, you cannot imagine St. Colman being an integralist or, wanting to.
Well, like, what would that even look like? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, they had to drag him out of his cave to make him be a bishop. And I'm not saying that we all are called to the monastery, but the monks, and this is something that Orthodoxy still keeps clear in its mind, the monks are considered to be sort of like the keepers of the flame. Those who are the monastics, female and male monastics, are called to that intense life of prayer that all of us aren't called to, but we're all together and they're praying for us. That's what we believe, and that we should look to them for guidance, and so on and so forth. I think that if you are living in the kind of Christianity that reveres figures like St. Colman, it's a very different kind of thing than someone who, when you're taught to revere your local bishop. Now, you should respect your bishop. Don't get me wrong about that. But, the Archbishop of Dublin is a very different figure than St. Colman. We're all part of the same church. But, I'm talking about what inhabits our imagination.
Right.
And I'm thinking that if I'm a father in Ireland, and I've got a son, and I can see he's being lost to the faith.
Yeah.
I'm not going to point to whatever's happening in the Archdiocese of Dublin or my own bishop. I'm going to take him to Colman's Cave. I'm going to take him to the Holy Wells. I'm going to try to inhabit the as much as I can in my imagination as well as his, the world full of wonder that those early saints had. Now,
Right.
I want to say too, Kale, that just this week I read something from the Pew Research
Yeah.
folks here in the U.S. That showed that only 35% of American Catholic parents, only 35% cared if their children grow up to share their religious faith.
So
It's incredible.
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, when I saw it this morning, I think I shot you a text right away. I was like, holy smokes. It's like you and I have talked on air and off air. Like the only thing that at the end of the day, the only thing I care about is precisely that.
Yeah.
And I've never understood adult Christians, faithful Christians. I've never understood how that is not a priority, like, or the priority. Everything else is second to that. And like, I know that I can't control it, right?
Yeah.
But I have to make darn sure as a father to make sure that my children's imaginations are not completely denuded, so that the Holy Spirit can't find a purchase. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm speaking
No.
well
You're
enough.
making a good point because I was telling Paul Kingsor, we were talking about this sort of thing. I said, the thing that worries me is not that my children might go to prison or die for their faith. I don't want that to happen.
Of course not. Yeah.
Neither is as scary to me as the fact that, or the idea that they might lose their faith, they might
That's right.
apostatize.
That's right.
But when you see these Pew numbers, those kids are not the kids of those of the parents, the I don't know, 65% who don't care, who don't
Right.
feel very strongly about it. Those kids will be lucky if they grow up and stay Catholic. And all of us, and I mean the evangelicals, they were much better. 70% of those parents said it meant a lot to them.
Right.
But any parent to whom it doesn't mean a lot, you can't expect anything from your kids, because we know. Let me just finish this. We know from social science. Christian Smith at Notre Dame has said this, that nothing is more predictive of whether or not a kid is going to grow up to hold their faith than whether or not the parents practice their faith.
That's right. That's right. And to me, like, what is your faith if you don't see it as important enough to give to your children? Like, I really want, like, what does it even mean to have a faith if if the faith is what you and I believe it is, right? Which is like our salvation, our destiny, that we are, to know, love, and serve God in this world, to be with Him forever in the next, right? I mean, like, how could you not want that for your own children, and how can that just not be a priority?
Yeah.
I'm led to in this uncomfortable position because I don't like to judge sort of like the veracity of people's claims, but like, what is your faith if it's not even going to register enough for you to want that for your children?
Yeah. And Niall Gooch, just wonderful English Catholic convert, he said on Twitter the other day, he said he doesn't understand why it is that so many of the church bureaucrats in his own church and other churches are so fixated on things like in the Anglican Church now. Oh, they're trying to wonder, should we use gender neutral pronouns for God, and should we do reparations for slavery? Or in his church, he said, let's have a synod on synodality. Right. Meanwhile, everything is freaking falling down around you.
That's right.
Everything.
Yeah.
And if the Pope ought to get himself. Pope ought to get himself to a cave, St. Colman's cave.
Get himself up to the now. Okay, I'm going to have a really ridiculous. Have you ever seen the movie with Steve Martin called The Jerk?
No.
Okay, so there's this great. So he's a complete idiot, and he through dumb luck, he invents this thing that makes him a millionaire overnight, that kind of thing, right? And so he has all of this money, and of course, the whole movie is about how do you separate a jerk from his money, right? Because he's an idiot. And so his whole world is crumbling all around him, right? Everything's falling apart. And then as he's leaving his house, he's like, all I need is this remote control, and all I need is this lamp, and that's all I need. And he like walks out, and it's like, Steve, the jerk, Marvin, I think is his name. It's been a long time. Like, you need more than like a remote control, right? the whole thing is falling apart, and the remote control and the lamp are like not going to cut it. And I oftentimes think about this with our church leaders, right? All of our church leaders, like, the whole thing's falling apart, and that we're going to have, a finger painting exercise.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. And I mean, I think this has helped sharpen, Kale, my take, or my approach to the Reenchantment book,
right.
that it's wonder that is going to save the faith and reignite the faith. Only wonder, only the sense of awe in the presence of God. And this is the thing that's sort of forming in my mind. Last night when I was flying back to Budapest on a late night flight, I was falling asleep and kind of in a half sleep, praying and thinking about St. Colman. And it's like, you could never get me to a cave to live. But I said a prayer. I said, Colman, pray for me to the Lord our God that I will have that same zeal for God's house that drove you to the cave. I want to see the face of God and to be a faithful servant to God in the same way. And it's only going to be that sort of radical willingness to turn from the world, to seek, not to turn away from the world only, but to seek God, that's going to make it through what we're dealing with now.
Yeah. And it just seems to be like increasingly the case that all of our various copes, as you and I have joked about before, like, oh, well, it's just this, or these weird sort of rear guard actions, as all of these things are getting stripped away, it seems to me that what we're left with is this wilded Christianity. Like that's kind of it. Like, what's
that's
left.
it. And look, man, Martin Shaw, Paul Kingsnorth, these new Christians, they get it. In my book, I'm planning to do a chapter on those two guys and Jonathan Pageau, all of whom are converts to Orthodox Christianity. And I didn't choose them because they are fellow Orthodox, but I chose them because their vision, I think, is what all of us, whatever our form of Christianity, need, that reacquaintance and an immersive reacquaintance with wonder. One of the things I've learned, I don't know if we talked about this on the previous episode, but attention is so key to enchantment. And, Martin has said, I was reviewing some of the things Martin Shaw has written before. He said, beauty is so important because it draws our attention to it, but real beauty scares us because it might pull us into places we don't necessarily want to go. Absolutely. Go to the cave of St. Colman. And I can't tell you exactly what the effect is going to be on me because I'm still feeling it.
Well, I think an experience of the beautiful judges us, right? I'm always reminded of that, archaic torso of Apollo, when you see its beauty, you must change your life. And I think that, perhaps that's one of the reasons why we as a culture are so, scared of beauty, like real beauty. Like there's this strange turn toward ugly on purpose, right? And I wonder if it's because we can't stand really to be in the presence of beauty because beauty judges. And
it's about control, Kale. The modern compulsion to control all experience is at the core of disenchantment.
Right.
And I think, and I see we're running out of time here, but we can end on this maybe. Madonna's face. Did you see
seriously?
it?
No, but I think it's on point.
It's on point because she was trying to control the aging process. And as she has resorted to chemicals and surgery to control her aging process, she's turned herself into a monster. And we could all see that. There's a lesson there for all of us.
Yeah, it's really sad, actually. And I can, jump on and flex like, oh, like this is awful and blah, blah, blah. It is. It's all those things, but it's ultimately it leaves me sad, right? It leaves me sad that our notions and conceptions of beauty have become so shallow that our only recourse is to butcher ourselves with strange surgeries that don't even work, Rod. Like you're fooling nobody. Right. And maybe that's a sort of an image of our moment. Like, who are we fooling? The only people we're fooling is us. So, all right. Well, look, brother, send us out here. This is where we are.
Yeah. Don't get nothing on you and stay away from the plastic surgeon, Kale.
Will do. Take care of it. Bye-bye.